Hey guys, it's Kate, and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. I'm back with another sketchbook painting, and this one I'm starting off with putting a background of some cadmium orange paint. So I'm going to make some notes of the colors I'm using in the little boxes at the bottom of your screen, and I'll just talk a little bit about my process while I complete this. I'm showing pretty much all of the steps today, but just kind of pieces of each one so that the video goes a little bit faster for you. But I think in total I probably spent about 45 minutes or so on this. And there were a couple of spots where I let it dry a bit before continuing so that I didn't smear too much color. But one thing I wanted to do with this was start with a bright background and then do my main painting over it. And that's something I've discussed in some recent videos that I've really enjoyed doing. Just making it very, very loose, sort of abstract or impressionist, and just kind of playing around with values and putting in some basic shapes where, elements will be. I did not use a photo reference for this one. I just kind of went from my imagination. I've kind of enjoyed doing some different bouquets and vases of flowers and stuff. So right now I'm really working with a lot of neutrals, and I'm starting to cut in the shapes around the basic bouquet outline in my painting. And so then I'm going to start adding some more colors to my little palette. And I'm also adding where I want my shadowy areas. So you can see I'm going to have my light source coming from the right and then some shadows going off to the left. And I'm also putting in a few shadowy areas at the top of the vase where the leaves and flowers might kind of cast a shadow onto the vase itself. And then on the right, I'm adding some more lightness. And pretty much for most of this video, I didn't really rinse my brush. There were a few times I used maybe a paper towel to wipe off excess paint. And I did do a couple of rinses here and there, but for the most part, I just kept continuing mixing color while getting this painting down. And I really like doing that. It kind of just, I don't know, everything sort of blends together. You've got your colors are very cohesive, and I really like that effect. And I'm just sort of practicing with that to find a good balance and still work on the values and all of that. So next up, I am going in to add my greenery over that orange. And so I'm just working on putting my brush down in several different ways. I don't want to have all the same type of blob everywhere for a leaf. So I'm just sort of getting some different values, some different shades of green, adding in that ultramarine and some of the brown in there. And just making sure to get a nice big variety, and then I can start nestling some flower shapes in there and then add a few more leaves to the front in front of it so that it looks not quite so flat. So that's another thing that I've been kind of trying to work on a little bit, is when you have those flowers that you're making, and if you're looking at a real life bouquet, there's little leaves kind of poking out everywhere, and they come in front of the flower heads. And I tend to forget about those sometimes unless I'm looking at a photo reference. So I'm trying to practice so that I naturally consider those when I'm putting them in to something imaginary that I'm working on here. So that's something I'll kind of add in toward the end, just some little overlaps of leaves, and so everything doesn't look quite so, I guess, two-dimensional. So going back to the painting, I put in a lot of that foliage, and now I'm kind of adjusting that background color a little bit, and it's going to go through a couple of adjustments, just trying to figure out what works best with what I end up with, because I wanted to make sure I don't have a background that is too close to the color of my florals, and maybe a mix of some darks and lights, and I wasn't sure what sort of color base I wanted to use. I knew I wanted it to be more neutral, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to go in that direction. So it kind of evolves as I go through the painting. But I also really like those little peaks of the really warm orange that kind of come through from the background. And most of it, of course, gets covered up by the end, but it really just adds a nice little glow to the painting. And I think you can probably most see it when we get to the end, sort of coming through a little bit of that foliage and a little tiny bit in the background, but mostly everything is covered, but it kind of adds just a nice glow. Even if you can't see the color itself, it has, anywhere where the paint isn't extremely opaque and has, 100% coverage, you're going to get a little hint of that orange tone through everything. But for this, I just liked how it sort of brightened up the feel. And it's also a very warm color, and the painting itself is a bit cool with the blues and the greens and the grays. So I thought it was a really nice contrast. So right now I'm just going through my flowers. I'm trying to figure out a good color for them, a good value, and I wanted some good variety in those flowers also. And you can see where yellow is a little bit more of a transparent color in general, so I added some titanium white, but I do go over my yellow flowers a couple of times. And I keep struggling with those pink flowers because I just can't decide what color what color pink they should be. So I just keep mixing, and I like that it builds up those layers. So if you're going through a painting and you decide to change something or change a color, like maybe you like the element that's there, but you don't quite like how bright or dark it is, or you want to change the color. I actually really like the outcome of painting over things, because a lot of times, especially if you're not too concerned about painting over it perfectly and, really masking it to make it, perfectly the color you want, is it gives it a lot of character, and it gives it, a lot of depth, I think, where you can see those repeated layers in a single element, and you can kind of get peaks of what it used to be, and it kind of all blends together to just give it a little bit more life, a little bit more of an organic quality. And so even with the background here that I am editing, you can see where I'm not that concerned with getting around each individual leaf perfectly. You can see a lot of variation in the paint itself and the little small changes in color here and there. And I have really enjoyed doing that, and it just makes it look a little bit more painterly, in my opinion. So we're starting to get into the home stretch, and I'm just, continuing with those values. I did some edits to my leaves and added some more in front, and I wanted to make sure to let them overlap with some of those flowers. And finally, I am going to be going into my flowers themselves and just adding a few extra values to them, a little bit more detail, but still keeping them very, very blobby, but your brain will still see flowers. And then I'm going to add a little bit of contrast with the flower centers also. And I think I did this whole painting using only 2 brushes. I have my filbert that I used. It's a bristle brush and a small round to do some of the smaller details. But I really also liked in this painting the small red flowers. I think I mentioned in a video a while back I really like to add a little pop of red somewhere, and I added it toward the end where it wasn't really in the rest of the painting, and I toned it down quite a bit by mixing it with the sky blue to make some of those flowers, but I really like that sort of burgundy color that it created. I thought that was really beautiful, and it gave a nice dark value in the flowers and foliage. I think one thing I would have changed about this painting was I felt that my flower arrangement took up way too much space at the top. My original space that I had sort of painted around for the flowers was a lot smaller than this, but they just kind of kept growing outward. And you can see it sort of started to take on the shape of my page. And so the flower arrangement is actually a little bit rectangle, which I think next time I do this, I'm going to change that. But I really hope you enjoyed this video today. I very much enjoyed making it, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the close-up. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you give it a try. If you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and until next time, keep creating.